So for anyone watching, obviously we've got Pete and Mark here, both design system specialists. So I guess kicking off, shall we kind of run through, obviously design systems has definitely become more popular over the last couple of years. So I mean, why do you think that they've become more recognized and companies are starting to implement them more?
It's a very good and well poised question. Like first of all, like we need to cover off that like so many more companies have them. So like it's over 60% now of enterprises that even have like design systems. And then, not forgetting all the startups or the scale ups and all of those that are attempting to use what I would say is like part of a design system, component libraries, like reuse and all those types of things. So in general, we've gone from like this historic kind of style guide and this kind of brand guide into just like a more modern version of that, which we now call design systems. And it has more depth and breadth to it, just like the growth of technology and design has. So it's actually a natural evolution. And I think they've come into fruition because they've been they've been given the time and there's some history behind them and actually an understanding of what they can do and what they can achieve, and what they can support an organization to do, for them and for their users. So I think it's honestly it's just really good timing, and it's really good bit of history that's then it come into light right now. What do you reckon, Pete?
Oh, you're on mute.
Classic. Off to a strong start. Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that the point around it being a natural evolution is very on point. I think that evolution from what were traditionally pseudo digital brand guidelines through to component libraries, Brad Frost obviously coming out with the would it be a talk about design systems without mentioning Brad Frost, right? His him coming out.
You got that before me. You got the Brad line out before. It's not fair. I'll do the Dan Moore. I'll do the Dan Moore line later.
Excellent. All right, we'll chalk it up between us. And I think all of those things kind of represent the desire in the industry to have a consistent terminology, consistent vernacular, and a way to mitigate kind of the risks that come with trying to interpret perhaps older techniques for communicating some of these things.
I think it's become like more obvious, like the return of investment now is there's like calculators. So Knapsack have a calculator to determine, the actual monetary and time savings. So I think it's now more obvious to more like C-suite within organizations to know the return. So I think the more and more we sort of celebrate and showcase that return, the more understanding there is that, oh, okay, no, this is cost saving. This is like, you're getting different types of talent come through, which then helps with this consistency, this efficiency. And then actually what that really means is delivering what the customers and users want, like on a more regular basis. So all this feature development. So we're all in agile, we're all in feature development, we're all in trying to like deliver that value to our customers. And now we can do it faster. We can do it more effectively. We can do more efficiency. We've got all of those different touch points, and it's more obvious now because it's now, there's places where you can see on different like design systems what the actual impact has been. And I think showcasing those numbers, and really seeing it is like, oh wow, like we can actually, I don't know, feel like what we do with human behavior, right? We can actually feel the emotion, the touch points are actually in front of us, which I think is awesome. So yeah, a lot of growth in the design system space in that area specifically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even from my side, I'm seeing like a lot of early stage startups are actually investing in it now, which is so nice to see because typically you see companies get to, Series C onwards and not necessarily have a mature design system in place. And then you almost have to work backwards, don't you? And you have to go through everything that's not been done to the absolute T. I guess for people where design system is, like you say, like a very small spec, could you like give an overview of like the benefits of a design system and why there should really be one in place as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just touched upon quite a few of those little points. Pete, I'll let you elaborate, like this consistency and like saving money, time, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a. I have perhaps an interesting perspective on when an organization and at what size it should perhaps start fully investing in a design system. I think there's a lot in the industry at the moment out there. If you go and you Google design systems, you're getting talks by people who come from very big entrenched tech companies talking about the way that they do design systems and the benefits that they get from that. And I don't think that that's necessarily representative of the benefit that you get at a smaller scale, nor do I think that those methodologies or processes are right for a smaller scale, because it takes time, it takes resources to mature a design system. And I think for places that are perhaps approaching that C round or perhaps before that, the scale and scope of a design system can be much smaller and still deliver on benefit. But that benefit is more around keeping things consistent at a granular level. It's perhaps investing in documentation, but light documentation, to make sure that you are not suffering from kind of entrenched knowledge leaving or going elsewhere, which is often something that happens when you're at a smaller scale. So do you need to go and invest in perhaps some of the big automation processes that come with design systems? Probably wouldn't advise that, but certainly getting some basics set up, like getting your Figma perhaps tidied up and consistent, making sure you are calling things the same thing consistently across an organization, investing in the language of your design system is, I think, super low hanging fruit if you're at a smaller scale, just to make sure those meetings and the conversations you're having between different departments are consistent and concise and are as fast and effective as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I often advise that. So for any startups or even a certain size scale up, what they need is something that they can use or reuse in multiple areas, or like the whole team can use. That doesn't mean you need that full-on enterprise level design system, for example. And the difference between, say, a component library and a design system in itself is pretty big. There's loads of different things that go into the design system. A component library for reuse is something that is the great part and is I would say one of the parts of a design system, but the startup might just need that. The scale up might just need that. At enterprise level, you're talking about like change management as much as like UX, like the whole framework of UX coming in, and then getting UX embedded into like the processes within an enterprise. The same thing's happening with design systems in enterprise. So design systems becoming like an embedded way and method and process within an enterprise. And that takes so much more. Like you need to do a lot around kind of education. You have to do a lot around like coaching and mentoring within that space. There's lots of different areas of a design system that needs to be considered, because trying to have an impact with a design system is a lot more work at an enterprise than it is a startup or a scale up. And that's where I believe what to your point and to your question, that where the return of investment is within those enterprise organizations, where they spend lots more cycles, lots of agile 2-week cycles on certain feature developments, for example, or they go through rebrands, and the rebrands takes years or a long time. Whereas if you've got a design system in place and you've got that method and process embedded into the enterprise, then a rebrand or a refresh then can be implemented much faster, much quicker. You've got everything connected to the right technologies, and even if a new technology comes out, the design system will be flexible enough, if done right, to then onboard that piece of technology and still be able to deliver the colors, the emotion, the behaviors, the animations, and all of those things throughout the design system, and throughout all the touch points of the organization too.
On the education piece, I guess it's really hard to do, because obviously it is something that is only becoming more popular because of, like you say, the work that has been done in enterprises. But do you think there is a way that we can do a better job of being able to educate startup scale ups on the reality of what they actually need from a design system, instead of, like you say, the full end to end that enterprises often have to have?
I have a pseudo formula for this, that It's always great when you start off describing something as pseudo. But Mark, I mean, I'm fascinated to hear if you have any thoughts on this. So I having done this job as a third party at large enterprise and now doing it at a scale up who has the right amount of investment to really invest in it. I asked myself this question a lot, which is how do you identify what the right things for your design system are at the right time? And I always bring it back to, in no particular order, to start with consistency, efficiency, usability, and scalability. And I think there's probably some other bits you could mix in with that, but I think when you sit down with an organization and the senior stakeholders of that organization, you talk about what that means, each of those words mean to a business and the order that they would like to put them in. The order that you come out with will tell you a lot about where the problems perhaps in the organization are, where you should invest in your design system. Because if a company's struggling to scale, well, that tells you that you should probably invest in things like automation and some of the more operational elements. But if you're struggling with consistency, well, then maybe you can focus more on the granularity and the library, and the component library, and the language around things. So you kind of that's my go-to mechanic. But yeah, I'm not sure if that would work for everybody, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like it's different though. Like one of those myths, or like let's say like I don't know, things out there in the open around design systems is that organizations' design systems are all different. And to your point, like you have to define what it needs, like what the organization needs and how to go about it and how to shape it. And they all become, slightly different. For example, and I've got like you, I've got like a method, I've got a process around this. And depending on where they are in terms of education and knowledge and stuff like that, I'll then put in different modules and different segments to support that. I've got like a 3 area approach, kind of thing that goes, a typical UX approach this is, I think, but it's like audit and research, right? So the audit and research process itself will basically develop a report. So you do the interviews and you develop the report, and you'll get an understanding of the maturity level of the organization within design systems. And then from there, then you can decide, okay, well, what type of level of education will this organization need to become effective and successful in their journey with their design system. And then from there, you then do the strategic stuff. So you do strategy and planning around the design system, like roadmap, adoption strategy, like contribution, all of those types of things, like vision statements. And you develop these things around that kind of maturity level, and only deliver what's necessary for like to achieve, I don't know, the next year's goals. And again, you're just keeping it to that maturity level that you've defined in the research and audit process. And then you go to execution. And then as part of the execution, you're only executing again on that maturity level. You're obviously trying to grow them to a certain level of maturity. You then do the planning and strategy, and then the execution is what they need for now and in the next, I don't know, it could be a year, you could put the 3-year plan in place. And by doing and going through that process, audit, research, strategy, and planning and execution, then you are delivering on that kind of maturity level and educational piece. That's my 2 cents. How I rock and roll.
Do you think that design systems are contributing to the industrialization of tech design?
I was really kind of struck by this question. I've always been struck by the industrialization word inside this design system space, and I always go back to like Henry Ford and the Industrial Revolution, and my brain just triggers, and goes there. But like, if we're talking about the taking care of the small parts and the parts that always repeat, like on everything and every touch point, and that's kind of taken care of, let's say, through like a factory process. And I always believe that that's a massive enabler for creativity. So my viewpoint on this is that let's get that kind of industrialized factory kind of part taken care of that's consistent everywhere, so that designers, creatives, and technologists can actually do the work that they're proud of, that they want to do, that they get excited by, and deliver the value to the users. That's where my mind kind of sits with that whole concept. Now I don't know if Pete, you got like a completely different viewpoint or the same on that one.
No, I really like your point around, yeah, if you get the consistency and the standardization of process fleshed out, then you have more time to focus on the real value add. I really like that articulation. But yeah, I threw this one to you, Jem, so I'll take a swing at it. I think design systems at their core, or the willingness for businesses at any level to adopt them, is a reflection of the tech industry's desire to begin industrializing its processes. I think it's a path they've been on since the late 90s, when those days were the Wild West, right? Your ability to write code and the number of people you had to write code was really like the key value proposition for employees in a lot of these businesses. I think as more and more companies need to digitize, as we've seen in the past couple of years with the boom in people moving into the tech industry, the lack of human resource available to fill roles, businesses, I think, have found themselves largely hamstrung by the ability to scale their resourcing, the inability to accurately predict and plan when they can get things shipped by, which anyone who works at the coalface will tell you, like, yeah, that's always going to be a challenge, right? But I think if you work in design, it's quite easy to forget that there are lots of other people in businesses, even in the most design-led businesses, that operate the same way any other business does, because they have to. And I think what design systems do and what they reflect is the slow move away from everybody being a superstar or relying on superstars to deliver good work, and bring a degree of industrialized global consistency to the table, right? And that's often kind of the end goal, right? It's, does our stuff work in every country in the planet for every demographic in a way that is consistent? And I think that's industrialization at its core, right?